Hello, everyone. So just to give you the intro of today, because there's a few new people, we'll do 10-second intros. Um, Fabian will be moderating, which is why I'm talking, which makes no sense.
Yes, exactly.
And then let's just wait for Peter to
So
get in,
this
because
is
Peter's
skit.
doing, okay. Over to you, Fabian.
Well, welcome everyone. So I will indeed be doing the moderation this time, as I've been introduced by our meta moderator. So teasing aside, we'll follow the schedule. I put the detail in the chat. We'll have about 90 minutes. We will do like a little round of introduction as is tradition. We'll try to stick to about a minute per person. It's also as a way for people who are joining now to catch up and to have a little bit of relaxed time. I'll do a quick demo. I'm not sure about what yet. I have a couple of features or a prototype to show, and Peter will also do a demo when he joins. So we'll do like 1 minute per person. You just speak like where you're from, what you're interested in, maybe why you joined here, whatever you're most excited by, whatever you can fit in a minute, basically. And then hopefully Peter will join by then. Otherwise, I'll do the demo, and then Frode, you'll do the presentation, and we'll riff on whatever you'll have presented to us. Dini, do you want to start, for example?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm co-PI with Frode on the grant for future text. Good to see everybody here this morning, and I'm looking forward to hearing what we are going to be hearing from with Frode and Fabienne and Peter. Is Peter here?
He's on his way, I think.
Okay, all right. Next.
Next on your screen, Fabian.
Well, let's say that's you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm in Norway now. I think you all know me. Thank you for being here. Just a really brief little thing. I learned today that the size of the human cortex, if unfolded, it's about 2 to 4 millimeters thick, is about the size of a work desk. And I think that's such an amazingly beautiful thing to think about what we'll be talking today, folding and unfolding information. So hopefully we'll have a discussion, all of us, that'll explode our brains all over our that's maybe not the best analogy. Anyway, Fabienne, on my screen, you are next.
Well, Fabien here, Brussels, Belgium. On the Future of Text Loan project, I'm the prototypist, and I'll show you that in a few minutes with a little demo that will hopefully work. If not, it will be a prompt for discussion anyway. Carl, please.
Oh, sorry, I've had my mic open this whole time. I'm Carl Smink. I'm a PhD student at Mississippi State University. I am studying virtual reality, and my dissertation is on investigating whether or not certain types of interactions in VR elicit an oxytocin response. Over.
Stella, please.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Stella Wisdom. I'm the interim head of contemporary British and Irish collections at the British Library. So that includes the UK Legal Deposit and the UK Web Archive. And really, I'm kind of interested in the future of publishing. I co-curated an exhibition looking at what we call emerging formats, but new types of publications. Not done a great deal with VR, but I'm super interested to see what's happening in the VR space. And yeah, it was great that I bumped into you, Frode, at the British Library a couple of weeks ago, and you told me about these calls. So I just kind of added them into my calendar, and I might hop in just to kind of hear what you guys are working on from time to time, because it looks super interesting. I'm probably going to switch my camera off because I'm going to eat a slice of pie, and no one wants to watch me eat the slice of pie. But it's good to see you all.
And Stella, I just have to add about you. You were at the very first Future of Text, weren't you?
I remember it. So I do. I remember it really well. And I know I've not been for a while, but it's really good to kind of catch up with this community. I almost think that event happened almost too soon. We just set up the digital, so I've moved into my new role now, but I've been a digital curator at the BL for quite a long time. But you're right, Fred, that event happened not long after that department had been set up. So yeah, it was very informative at the time, and I was glad to be there, and I'm glad to reconnect now. I feel like I wished I'd kind of been to more of the symposiums over the years.
Yeah, wonderful. Uh, yeah, Fabian, do you want me to do the names while you set up in the headset, maybe?
Oh, thank you, but it's all fine. Ken, please.
Hi, I'm Ken Perlin. I'm professor of computer science at New York University. Our current research of our future reality lab is mostly focused on socially shared mixed and blended reality. And I might be able to show a little demo later too.
Carl, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm Carl Evenstride. I work at the U.S. General Services Administration, at least for now. I've been in the supporting people with disabilities space for, I guess, almost 30 years now. I discovered Doug Englebart's work, so that's how I met Frode. I'm a PhD student at Fielding Graduate University in the Organizational Development and Change program. My dissertation is looking at extending Engelbart's, building on his 1962 paper about the latent capabilities and a human capabilities augmentation system, and then building it, applying some of the organization development things, a social, political, and technical systems frameworks, and kind of blending those together.
Thanks, Carl. So just also a reminder, especially as I see a chat, please, when you have a link to your work, dissertation, lab, etc., do post in the chat. We keep the logs of the chat. Also, this is public. This is recorded in case that wasn't clear before. So yeah, have that in mind. But do post whatever, share whatever you want about your work or anything relevant to the discussion in the chat. It will also be posted on the blog after. We'll keep the link. We try to curate all this. So please don't be shy. Mark, please.
Hello from sunny Portsmouth, UK. I'm a hypertext researcher and sort of recovering doctoral student. I first got involved in future text about 2017, and I've sort of had a foot in it ever since. But my main interest is hypertext, particularly spatial hypertext and knowledge elicitation. It probably won't come as a surprise that I see something of a link between XR and spatial hypertext. Is just, you know, now with extra dimensions. So that's my main linkage here. Apart from that, I've done a fair amount looking at essentially the history of the hypertext conference. And recovering a few things from the long grass before it's lost. I think that's all that's fit to print. Okay.
Super. Alan, please.
Hey, I'm Alan Laidlaw. I'm in Brooklyn and passionate about these topics. Just an observer here today.
Abhirami, please.
Yeah. Hi, hi everyone. I'm Abhirami Ajit. I'm a PhD scholar in English from IIT Kanpur, India. So my research focuses on experimental narratives, textuality, and also the modalities of reading. I'm currently developing a chapter that looks at some texts as book labyrinths, exploring the trajectory of texts as puzzles. So it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. Jim, please. I think you're still muted.
Hi, I'm Jim Strayhorn in Menlo Park, California, part of Silicon Valley, or vice versa. I'm an interested observer, especially interested in visually self-evident text also called formatting. But more broadly, I'm an architect by training who is very interested in information spaces in general and how information can be organized a la Doug Engelbart, who was a neighbor, in fact.
Super, thank you. Peter, please.
Okay, I'm an attorney by formal training. Been studying computer science since my undergrad days, so basically undocumented PhD equivalent on the comp sci side. My main interests are end user programming, hypertext, of course. I've been part of the hypertext community since I met Mark Bernstein at a Macworld Boston way, way, way back when we had floppy disks. And I've been a core member of the team since, well, very early on.
Super. And Peter, sorry, are you ready to give a demo after the round of introductions?
Just give me a little time to get all prepped on the back end before I go into screen sharing. I'll let you know when it's ready.
Perfect, thank you. Rob, please.
I'm Rob Swigert. I'm practically a neighbor of Jim's. Where is he? Also in Menlo Park. I'm a writer, early hypertext author, and I've been here for over a year, hanging out and trying to understand what we're going to be doing in the future with all this gadgetry.
We're all trying to figure it out. So, Elijah, please.
Hello, I'm Elijah Schwerian, and I am a philosophy student and someone working on their PhD in anti-corruption. I am just someone interested in text and was able to make the previous symposium. Thank you for letting me be here.
Super. Jimmy, please.
Hello. I am a big fan of this group and the efforts with regards to everything text and next generation presentation possibility spaces. I personally am sort of tinkering with my own apps and keep threatening to throw my hat in the ring with something along those lines. And I really, immersive analytics, I think, is really the sweet spot for me. I think the presentation of high dimensional, complicated ideas in 3D 6DoF space is just so useful. It has so many applications. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, it's a great occasion to say if you, any of you, have a demo today, something you want to share, ideally, let's say 5-minute stops, because everybody needs to go on with their day after. But if you have a short demo today, if not next week, whenever, please do reach us, or yeah, just come forward and show something. We have the time. Tom, please, we're doing a quick round of introduction.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sorry, is my usual tardiness. I've got to get this class changed for next year, but I literally rush out of a class that ends at 10:30 and have to drive 15 minutes home. And of course, they closed my exit on the freeway too, so that made it even more fun than usual. Anyway, my name is Tom Hames. I am a technologist and founder of Idea Spaces. And I'm working on a AI-driven knowledge mapping solution. I am also a teacher and writer and a bunch of other stuff, but I guess that's enough for today.
Super.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think if you have not introduced yourself, please come forward, but I think we pretty much done it. So either Peter, you're ready, or I will show up to you.
Okay, you can go first. I'm just making sure I have the whole sequence ready.
Damn it, that's not what I wanted to hear, but we can try. So let me see. Otherwise, I'll do it without the headset because I can't get screen mirroring. That's okay. So I will have to go back a tiny bit because not everybody has been there every time. So I'll show things that are a little bit old for some people. Please let me know if you can see my screen. And I can see you, so you need to. Somebody needs to shout
Not
forward.
yet, Fabian. Not yet.
That's not a good thing. Because either it works right away or it doesn't work at all usually. Anything? I think maybe.
Yes, now suddenly.
Super, thank you. So that's the companion part of the prototype. So to also show some of you some of the capabilities. So on the top right, so that's a live URL. So you can go to this address there and you will see this that will work in the headset. It's mostly tested on the Quest 3 and the Vision Pro. If you display a bunch of text, I highly recommend the Vision Pro. If you move things around, the Quest is more than fine and it does work on it. There are a couple of things to know, and one of the most special, let's say, is that the URL allows you to do quite a few things. So in the URL here, you can have a username, and if you're power user, you don't need any authentication. You'll have new testing things, like for example here, you have a PDF that's been converted and you display the content of it. And each of the lines here can be tucked away and then highlighted. You can pick the color there. You can get the highlight. If you do the highlights, you will get a JSON, which is not necessarily super sexy if you're not a developer. And if you're not a developer, you'll have, let's say, a JSON viewer so that you can have your different highlights with their type to the colors. I'm not showing you live from the headset because technical reasons. So I hope some of you who've been there before can confirm that all that technically works.
It works.
Thank you. You have on the left those highlighters, so pens to do free-form highlighting. So if you pick the tip of a pen with your right hand, and then you draw around on the white background, you can do free-form highlighting. This doesn't result into data being extracted for the moment. It's just visual, but I believe it's quite useful already because you can also sketch, draw, whatever. So you can think a little bit rather than solely puke lines out of the page. All those are commands you can move also to organize them and feel safe. That works also in AR. So if you have also a whiteboard, you can draw through it. You won't get the result in the digital space, but that's still usable. One of the last thing that I can't easily show you, well, actually another thing I can briefly show you is that through, again, those URLs, you can change, maybe some of you know that background, but if you upload something, so you drag and drop in that corner, you will have the file accessible. And if you set the value of that sky source to the image, then you basically change the background. You can do quite a few things like that, including changing the color set. You can have 3D model in the background. So for all that, you don't need to change the code itself. You change that with URL, which I believe in terms of WebXR is quite powerful because you can share that URL in the chat, which I'll do right now. And if somebody else were to upload another GLB there, so a 3D model, and share it back on the chat, even though they don't touch the code itself, they will have a visually totally different environment. Does it make sense? And I can't see you, so I'll hope some of you are nodding. otherwise, please do ask. Another thing, the same way will be is that when I type the name correctly, you can do this also on set of objects, not just single object, let's say the sky, but all the panels. So anyway, I have a couple of examples like this of modification by the URL. One thing that is, you can load a bunch of content on it this way. One thing that I can't easily show you, and I showed last Wednesday, so I must have a video somewhere on Slack, was to pick an element. So here, for example, the white page that symbolized the content we're authoring, and then you can drop it on any of those panes, and then it's going to align to it. That would work also for the cube, as we discussed last week. And for the last bit, I'll have to go in the chat. So I loaded a set of references that Mark here curated. You can pinch on them. They're all text you can grab. And then for each of them, we have the metadata available as a short or small let's say cardboard equivalent with some of the metadata. They were not used yet. For example, filtering on author or sorted by publication year, all this is not there yet. But the metadata is there. If we were to have the open access direct URL of the PDF, we would be able to display it as I was showing before for the highlighting and this kind of things. And I believe that's about it for today. And I apologize for the lack of demo through the headset, but mirroring is a bit of hit and miss. So today it's a miss.
It's actually much better to see it like that because there's not so much movement, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's less movement, which I also guess for video compression, it's much better. For people who haven't been in the headset though, it sucks because you don't really get the gist of it. If you did use an XR headset, well, you know, with hand tracking, you would grab all those elements, interact with them. That being said, the URL is live, so you're invited also to try it directly.
Yeah, the link is in the chat. It's on our website.
If Peter, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, then perfect. Then please go for it.
Okay, let's see now. How do I start sharing on this?
Big green share button, bottom middle.
I think I had the window shrunk too much. Let's see. There we are. Okay.
We can see.
All right.
It looks good, Peter.
Okay. What I've been working on is a back-end sync server. So what this program does is it runs on my shared hosting service, and it allows me to probe, set, and fetch values on a data store. And I've tested this, and I can access it from inside the headset. So if I push some data out from inside the headset, it'll be present on my remote server, and then on my laptop, I'll be able to get that data back. So I have data in and out of the headset using this mechanism. The server is looking for URLs that are prefixed with Lime up on top, and the Lime subdirectory is where I put this project on the server. The actual commands it supports are a dump all, and dump all will give a JSON representation. Actually, it'll give a YAML representation of the JSON that is being stored on the server. So right here we see some data. We also have reset. Reset will clear out the entire data store and dump everything. So after we've run reset, dump all shows we just have an empty JSON object with no fields to it. We then have the ability to post. So we have a set command. The set command allows you to upload content. So if the URL starts with set and the next value after the operation that you're requesting is a lens construct. And that's basically a path into the data structure describing the focus at which you want to add some data or read some data. We form lenses by adding colons after keys. If one of the keys is a number, that represents an offset in an array. Otherwise, it represents a symbol key. So here we're going to post a little bit of text. Welcome to the Lime Sync server. And if we send that out, that will now be part of our data store. And if you take a look down here on the bottom of the screen, that value is now stored underneath the about key. Now we can get about. Let's see where we have that. Did I have a get about path here yet? Okay, let's create one real fast. Let's start with get color. I will duplicate this. Oh, by the way, the program I'm using here is called Insomnium, and it's, okay, get about. And Insomnium lets you test paths when you're hitting a remote API. So it's a nice little user interface. You can store all the different paths that you want to hit. Now let's get about. Issuing the command to the server, and we have the text back. So this is how we'd be able to upload from a client inside a headset data and pull it back out. We can, like I said before, we had set about, and we can also set text. Now, if a key doesn't exist, it'll get added. Now, if you notice here, our client, and this could be a client inside the headset, in this case, just an ordinary web client, picked up the change to the data store. So when I set text to gosh, it works, a couple seconds later, that data automatically gets picked up in the client. The client's using a long polling strategy. Basically, every 15 seconds or so, it checks the server to see if there are any changes to the data store, and if they are, it updates them in real time. For instance, we can set our color. We're going to set the background color. When we set color to navy, it should be picked up in the client in a few seconds. And there we go. Now, if we're editing on a remote system, we could type something different than gosh, it works. We can type a multi-line thing. Let's see, this is line 1. Aha, it really does work. Now, when we change focus, the system will then upload that to the sync server. And at this point, if we take a look at our full data dump, we'll see the new text value being this is one line, haha, it really does work. The other aspect we get is when we're adding a key, we automatically prepend a nested value. This allows us to do something like our next little demonstration. Let's set Peter's age to 39. Okay, if we get Peter's age, we'd get 39 coming back from it. Now, we could also say that the confidence in Peter being 39 is going to be...
It's 12 o'clock.
Low. We've now set confidence low. And now if we do a dump on Peter's age, we'll see that my age is 39. The confidence value in it being 39 is low. We can also post on values. Now, let's say we want to set our color, but we want to set our color to a hex value that doesn't work inside of a URL. We can post that, and it will pick it up as a JSON value, and we now get the color set there. So you can use the post method if you want to have a big, long hunk of text. So, for instance, we could set something to be an array using the set post. And now if we dump all, we'll see that we now have a favorite, which is a list with green as the first value. We also have the ability to append. Let's say we want to create, let's see, well, first of all, let's see if we have any favorite colors. We don't have a key for favorite colors currently. One of the features is that we will automatically vivify the path up to the point of something that we're adding. So now let's append to favorite colors red. We've appended red to favorite colors. Now if we get favorite colors, we will see that we get back an array with red as its value. Now let's append blue, because I like blue too. It's another favorite color. And now blue becomes part of that array. We can also remove values from an array in a similar fashion. So I'm working on fleshing out the API to give some more functionality to it, but this is basically the style. Everything's constructed with a simple URL. You use a get method, whether you're setting or retrieving values. The first key, again, is the command. Currently, the only commands available are append, remove, get, set, dump, and reset. Then the next value is our lens. Now the lens again is a path. So for instance, let's post a whole list of numbers. We now have a bunch of numbers available. Get numbers, no longer unknown. Now we have the list of numbers. Now we can get the third element, because of course we're zero-based indexing, and we get 9, which was the third element in our array, because offset 2 is actually the third element, and we're able to get out that way. So we can do lists, we can access individual elements in lists, and it's all done with a simple URL loading interface. And that's the end of the demo. So I guess we'll stop sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any question? I have one before, while people think. Is there a URL to the, is it open source? And if so, is there a URL to the code for it?
I don't have the code up currently. The system is just basically running as a black box while I'm tweaking it and getting it where it's presentable. I don't want anyone to see the code while it's messy. I like all my code to be elegant and beautiful looking.
We all want that.
But in the meantime, anyone's free to hit those URLs and play with it.
Nice, thank you. No hand raise. You can reach Peter also after if need be. While people still think a bit, I guess. Leon and Brendel, we did the traditional round of introduction, about a minute per person. It is sadly for you two mandatory, so please, Brendel, if you want to start.
My name is Brendel, and I am a really ardent devotee of extended mind and embodied cognition. That makes me really excited by what we can do with the new sort of increasingly immersive capabilities of things like a Quest and other headsets, because it means that we can put information and create spaces for knowing and understanding things in an entirely new light. Professionally, I work on and design the web standards that should constitute the future of these things. So I'm working on what the HTML model element is and what authentically 3D CSS are, in order to make all of this stuff work, as well as WebXR, which is exceptionally useful prototyping platform, but something that I hope we can move past in order to make a more flexible kind of future for more web development and more informational sort of transactions. So I'm very, very happy to be involved in the community and to be able to see so much amazing progress.
Thanks, Brendel. And I'm here also thanks to you, because we had discussion like this long time ago, where basically XR is not just for games. So indeed, to see it happening is exciting. Leon is...
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm Leon. I'm located in Budapest, Hungary. I'm here because of Fabien, I guess, because of you, or initially, a long time ago. And I found people with the same interest here, or overlapping interests, which is spatial computing, WebXR, looking at old interfaces and new possible interfaces. Brandel was already telling beautifully about that, and the perhaps hidden possibilities. We don't know yet, but maybe we can accidentally discover some. And yeah, personally, my niche interest in this is trying to see if there are any cool things possible with WebXR and spatial computing, which are not being seen by, let's say, the mainstream innovators. For example, yeah, big companies, they really have to focus on, big audiences, and they have to focus on experiences for those audiences. While on the way, there might be some really simple, low-hanging fruits there, which are not interesting for the mainstream, but could be very interesting just from a personal perspective. So not from a multiplayer perspective. And this is also how I ended up working and experimenting with XR fragments, which basically allows controlling 3D models via URLs in a read-only way. So it's a single-person experience. And yeah, it kind of falls into the same category Frode once described, which is that perhaps VR headsets and spatial computing are a very personal thing or experience instead of some kind of shared experience per se. And yeah, that's a bit about me. And yeah, I'm happy to listen more of the thoughts in this room. Thanks.
Thank you. And actually, Dini, I put the link for XOR fragment in the chat because you had the presentation on the next and the virtual aspect of it, including some of the affordances of the object you present there. And Leon worked on some of that, like how to expand basically a 3D model with what kind of affordance can be done at the GLTF or GLB or at a level where you can pass that along independently of the code, basically. So I think that would make, I'll try to coerce Leon, I say this for fun, into presenting a demo of some of this, because I believe that would be very helpful. Yes, Dini?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I have, we should be pushing the new interface before I leave on Thursday for the TED Talk, right? And so for those of you who weren't here for that presentation, we have a lot of physical artifacts in the next. So we have the digital files, but people also had artist books and all kinds of props and costumes and things that went with performances and readings, even folios and jewel cases and things like that. And so rather than keep them in a box and not let the public see them, we've been turning them into 3D models, and they're available right now in the next to manipulate. But I took it a step further. I got a small grant, about $20,000 from the university, to turn them into a VR environment. So you can actually go into the VR space and play with these, and you can manipulate these objects. The new version, I've hired a brand new 3D modeler who's just incredible. So now when you look at when we push this new version, the beach ball is so realistic. It even has the puckers at the seam. So, and then you can toss it, you can throw it and bounce it. So the physics is working on it and it rolls. So the rule that we're following in this production is that whatever physical objects, whatever they do in the real world, they need to be able to do in that virtual world. Anything we do to that object in the real world should be available in the virtual world. So we're working on developing a lot of updates to those models. So I'll be showing those this next Saturday.
And for people who didn't have the chance to be with us a couple of weeks ago when you presented the next, I'll put also the link to your recorded presentation on the next in the chat. Leon, one quick point, and then we'll jump to Frode's presentation. Please, Leon.
Yeah.
We can't hear you. I think you're still on mute.
Oh, yeah, to jump in on.
But we can see, yeah.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I think, what you're talking about. So I saw this artifact. Fabien told me about it, and I downloaded the model, and then I added some Excel fragments to it. So I don't know if you can see it, but if I mouse over this, you can see hash t is 0,2. This is an XR fragment tag. Well, it's actually a W3C media fragment, and it basically tells the timeline to play between 0 seconds and 2 seconds. So if I click it, this is basically what happens. So it stops. So if you look at the URL, you can also see, oh, this is the new URL. So I can even share this opened
That's cool.
space. And I can also take, if I click on the booklet, I can basically take out this booklet. If I click on the CD, you can basically get out the CD. So this is a bit, if I click it again, it will close. And this is basically just XR fragments in the URL controlling the timeline. And this is, I think, what you would want to really give the user the, the experience of what can be done with the objects. Of course, next level would be to put it actually in a CD player, but that's that's a bit far fetched for now. But I thought it was nice to just demonstrate how just adding some XR fragments to the GLB model can basically can make a 3D model really code agnostic. So there's no code in here, and anybody in the future can just, see these XR fragments, and in the 3D model viewer, it can be replayed in the same way. So the animations are also inside the 3D model, so it's fully contained.
Leon, that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'll talk to you after. The other thing we're adding, and just so you'll know, we're going to put a ruler up in the interface so that you can see the sizes of objects, because everything looks the same, sometimes. And so these additions will really add a lot to that space. So thank you for doing that work. We'll talk. I'm excited about this project. I'm getting ready to write a larger grant to fund us to be able to do more. I have 108 boxes of media, of visual archives, and I'd like to get more than 24 objects online.
Wow.
I even have things that Rob Swigert gave me. Where's Rob? Rob, I want to put some of your stuff online.
So to give a bit more context, I put the link in the chat to your presentation last time for people who are wondering, like, how do we switch to a 3D object and animation and all this. It's all linked to preservation, basically, of content over time, the metadata about them, the kind of rich interactions. So yeah, super. We, though, have to keep it. It's my harsh role as moderator to keep it on time so that everybody can move on after. Frode, if you're ready to present, please do.
Yeah. Today's theme is, hang on. There's the typical thing of you guys taking too much space, so I can't see the whole thing. Right. You can see the screen, I hope. Good. By the way, the only person I can see right now is Fabien. So if anyone has a question worth interrupting, please just speak. I won't be able to see any thumbs up or anything. So authoring volumes. In the context of what we're doing with the Sloan Foundation, we can think of it as basically being spatial references or references in space. The key thing that I want to get across before we start a discussion is to give you an introduction to the complexity of authoring in XR as I see it after the work that we've been doing together. One of the things is a citation in space, which is what academics have to deal with. There will be metadata. They will know things about them. That is not for discussion today. We know we're going to have the basic stuff. We may have more. So just while you're thinking about this, please keep that in mind. I hope the chat messages are not for me because I can't see them. One thing we looked at was having many different kind of framed shelves or boxes in space. We threw that away. So that is something that is out of scope of how we're looking at it now. What we are left with is a cube, or Rob Swigert language, volume. That is what people will author into. We have these amazing hand and wrist menus Currently, if you tap on your left wrist when you're in what Fabian has built, it'll hide or reveal commands. The thought we are going for here to separate your workspace of knowledge with what you are creating is that you tap on your right wrist and that reveals or hides this manuscript cube. So this is where it's getting to be a bit of complexity coming up. For the hand menus that we've had since last year, which I think are absolutely amazing, there is a huge amount of complexity in what they will do because it relates to, are you looking at the cube or the thing you're authoring, or are you looking at the way you're dealing with the space? We have some incredible people here today, and particularly you, Ken, will have many more ideas for interface options. These are just some of them worth highlighting. Starting at the top, HUD sometimes really works in this kind of a space. So you could change glasses and you see different things. We can have a small little action cube you can stretch and do things with. You can actually have a tool belt. You look down and you take different tools out like they are physical objects. There could be a floating control panel, an idea I personally didn't like in the beginning, but it makes sense for some things. You have this thing floating wherever you go, press buttons on it, things happens. We all know about gestures, but what we've really been hammered over the head about over the last year is the operating system is taking more and more gestures as it has to. And also there's gesture clash. You just move your hands while you're sitting, working, thinking, and suddenly the system thinks you're doing things. It's been a big problem. Plus people have to remember the gestures. They have to be natural after teaching. So it's not just, let's have a gesture. It's complicated. Gloves means change your gloves so your hand does different things. Just a way of looking at that. And then we've been discussing whether in the environment to have a physical table or not, which should be the user's control. Primarily, we're talking about VR because AR isn't supported by WebXR at this point. A gadget, that's just the idea of having something like a joystick floating in space that you can, move around. There are myriads of opportunities here. And there's a brief slide of my experience building the mapping view in Author. As you can see here, there's a lot of controls for what kind of things you should see and hide, how you should do the layout, and so on. On a computer, traditional computer, you can have control-click menus and all of that. We don't have that in XR. So we together, to Author in XR, we have to invent ways of doing it. And here, just showing a few different views of a 2D map view, it can get really messy really quickly. Glossary, before the very end of things, is, first of all, there's the notion of a binder. That would be the same as proceedings, let's say the ACM Hypertext 2025 proceedings. That is a collection of articles. There are many different kinds of binders. I'll show you in a later slide why I think this is really, really important. The cube, to reiterate, is your manuscript, meaning unpublished work. It is your notepad, it is your word processor, it is your workbench, it is where you make new magic. Knowledge object can mean many things, but for the basic thing we're thinking about, it is a thing which represents a piece of knowledge such as what was originally PDF. You can see it either as a dot or as title, a name, or as a small PDF, whatever it might be for the use, but it's basically the stuff you use to cite from. Now, in annotation, this is really quite important for the workflow for an academic. You go through different knowledge objects, different papers, and then you write one annotation on each. That is your view of what it is so that you can make an annotated bibliography. It is not highlighting a lot of stuff. It is almost like a yellow post-it at the back of a paper document that can then be used later. And finally, the workspace in this language is everything except for your cube. Any questions as to the glossary? Good. So 2 more slides basically. First is complexities of the environment. And these are the sources for authoring and components to make a new cube. There is a lot. I'm going to highlight a few of them. Under space management, there is how do you change your entire workspace? To change it from being a timeline listed by authors to a knowledge map, we have to come up with interfaces for that. There are other global options such as should objects be icons or text. There are many issues of how to show and hide stuff by criteria, such as do you want to see only people or do you want to hide people? Similarly, group selection by lasso is difficult in WebXR, but Fabienne has been working on a box selection, which is great. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, you'll be able to pick up a piece individually by pinching on it, but also by category. These are all capabilities that are important. Our question is, how do you do it? The reason to split the cube from the rest of the space is that you don't have to have the same tools for everything. And hey, that may change. On the bottom here, relationship management. A little bit is the same as the mapping thing you saw earlier. When do you show relationships? Is it when you just select stuff or do you have to do more? And then related to that is following links. When you follow a link, should you, as you do on a web link, just open it up and replace what was there? Or should you somehow open it up into the current map? At least theoretically, you should be able to do that. So you have all these small things inside the big space. What is the action to make that happen? How do you deal with them once they are there? And then my personal bugbear or interesting issue is the notion of groups. How do you fold and unfold things in this environment? If you open proceedings for a conference, what does that mean? If you have an icon for the cover of it, let's say, when you open it, do you open it and replace that cover? Is that now gone? Is it shown as a list? Is it shown as a knowledge map? If so, how do you change it into one of the other ones? How do you fold it back into itself? How do you take items out that are of interest? These are not just issues of pinching and moving an item to the side, because that doesn't have semantic meaning necessarily. Of course, it can in spatial hypertext, but in terms of how you manage large volumes of this, it's an interesting issue. Any questions on this? There's one more slide. No vocal questions. Okay, typed ones I can't see. So then we look at the complexities of the actual cube, which is basically the topic of today. It's kind of linear versus spatial, and there's so many things. For instance, basic cube interactions. How do you rotate and scale the cube and sizes, right? Now, how do you write inside it? Do you write on one side? And if you want to write linearly, how do you do that? Does it scroll or does it change size? If you want to write like hypercards, how do you write a card and then say new one and thread them together? And that's all in the cube. How do you then use the large space around it for authoring? If you go down to the lower left, we have 6 sides of a cube at least. You know, we have to decide what these sides should be. Of course, we can have more sides. Then we get to the notion of connections again, and that's very similar to the previous slide's connections. If you come across a connection in a cube to new knowledge objects, in other words, other cubes rather than just a PDF or a web page, does that open up inside the cube, replace the cube, or does it open up on the side? Or can you choose that? How can you copy something from the cube? How can you cite the cube? If you can't cite it, in a way, I think you would agree, it doesn't exist as an academic object to an extent, right? And if you do cite it, do you cite the cube just as a volume, or do you cite it in the current way you are viewing it? Does that come as part of it? And then views, how to choose the different size, what they should show, how can you customize them? How can you save and retrieve views? That's going to be very important, I think. And looking on the right, top right, how do you add stuff? Probably you will just pinch things in space and just plop it in. What does that mean? Will it be part of the thing you see in the front? Will it go inside the volume? And so on. How do you save the different states of that? How do you add different media? Sculpting, once you have things, how do you then rearrange the linear view of it, if you have a linear view? And how do you change the volume of the 3-dimensional or multidimensional information you have? And then finally, as I kind of related in the beginning, if you think of this cube as being able to be folded out onto your desk, how do you do that? What's the interaction? Do you speak it? Do you do a gesture? Do you do a tool? Do you pull it? Do you pull it from a corner? And unfolding it is very different from having it exploding, like an exploded diagram. How can you make it really use the room, but then easily go back again so that you can have many cubes / many documents open at the same time? These are some of the questions. So here, this is not a diver, it's a guy with goggles. But if we look at the kind of space in the background, it's just a pencil sketch. But think about it. We have a list. We kind of have a timeline. We have a cube. That's the basic of it. But we have an opportunity and a duty, I guess, to figure out how do you do all that stuff. So with that, I would love to hear your ideas, and also not only for today, but also ongoing. And if you want to, now that we have the simple idea of the cube, if you draw a cube and have an idea for interaction, please share it with us, even if it's horribly drawn like mine was. But if you want to use generative AI as well, whatever you want, just don't be shy. This is where we need to get to the nitty-gritty details. So back to you, Fabienne, with questions, and then obviously I'm happy to answer questions, but this is a discussion. It's not a presentation, Dave.
Up to actually anybody but me. So I think, Dini, you already have your hand up, please.
There are some good questions in the chat. I was going to point out, Leon asked, in what way is the cube not comparable to clipboard?
Yeah, that's a good one. And also, because of the record of this, the record is better from spoken. So even though you've written, I'll be very happy if you speak it. The cube is supposed to, first of all, be the thing you whip out of your jacket pocket to write a note while you're working. But it's also the thing that you have when you sculpt your knowledge object to publish to other people. So it's definitely also a clipboard, but it's not just a collection or a dump. It is an organized, academic, reasoned, cited work. And by the way, for this, we are, with great kindness, using Dini as the main use case. The main use case here is an annotated bibliography, really using citations. So yeah, it is very focused. We can't just build a space that anybody can do any work, because then it would be too vague, I think. Fabienne?
Yes, to go on this point actually, or the clipboard part, and also to connect with what I was showing before about, or actually did not show, but where you can take a document as a blank slate and then you drop it next to the panels and it snaps to them. You can imagine those panels folded back, because there were actually 6 panels, as a cube, and then you snap the document on part of that cube, or that, as I put in the chat, primitive can be another one, but cube it's with the 6 faces, and the document would snap on the center of the face. But if you have a smaller document, you can put a dozen documents on that face, and then as the copy pasting or the clipboard part, the same way that right now in the prototyping environment, the wrist, you can take a command and drop on the wrist as a way to execute that command back. So you can change basically the shortcuts on the wrist. That could be the same for the face of the cube, namely the affordance per face. For example, you have a color on that face to show that's the kind of affordance. Then you snap the documents and it will be the affordance that you had snapped on that face. Not sure if that makes sense, but anyway, technically it's a quite straight path to implement.
Thank you for that, Fabienne. Jimmy, I see your hand, but just briefly in the chat here, so we don't ignore them. Tom asks, are the 6 cubes or walls, or is it interior volume part of the space? Yes. I'm trying to be intentionally amusing by saying that, because that's the magic of it, right? At a certain time, it's a small little notebook you put things in, but you should be able to make it a proper large space. And theoretically, that's one thing, but it's so exciting. We're now at the stage, because of what Fabienne just explained, things can snap onto things. We can actually design the actual interaction for that. It's no longer a movie director and things are just happening. So yeah, good question. And then it was Jimmy. Sorry, Fabienne, you take over. Just Jimmy, and then you go back to moderating. I apologize.
No problem. My only question was, you didn't, but Fabio did mention briefly the concept of a keyboard, and I don't understand the input side of what you're working on now. And maybe if you do have a physical keyboard, there's certain options you can do to combine the ability to work with selections, and so a keyboard key plus a pinch on the hand, for instance.
Right. So for this, you need the keyboard. So to go back a bit to the short demo I did at the beginning, Maybe some of you also saw the bracket HUD. So if you have a physical keyboard like so, in Bluetooth or otherwise plugged in your headset, then you type and then you have the text. If you're a developer, you can also have the code there that you can execute with the left pinch. So that for sure is a most efficient way in some context to add information. Let's say if you're flying, or if you're at your desk, that's probably the kind of interaction you want. But if you are organizing rather than inputting the text, and you probably want to move them, but it can indeed be combined the same way you have like Control Shift or like coded inputs. You could do this also. I did some prototype on that. It's definitely powerful, but it's also, I would argue, like power user kind of stuff, because you need to facilitate the discovery of such shortcuts. It's a little bit like the learning VI versus notepad. For sure, you can do more, but not everybody is willing to put the efforts into it. But technically, it's been tried. It does work, and it's definitely feasible. And yeah, that also would be some of the hope. Sorry, I don't want to go too much on this, but it's some of the hope of having something that is a prototyping environment that's open source. Is if somebody wants to go there, like deep in the trenches, and they do have such a keyboard and they don't mind. They even, like Peter was suggesting, how to strap a keyboard on a kind of plate on top of them so that they can move freely and seek stuff with a keyboard still. That would actually work today, and it would definitely be, for some people, working.
I need to pick up on that. Entirely correct what Fabien said, and also in terms of the interaction. My own software author, I'm doing a special demo on Thursday, so I'm doing a slideshow to go through, specifying the things to show off. I have so many features on my own software that I forget, right? Most of them are keyboard shortcut related. That is what I'm trying to really spiritually guide us through not having here, right? Yes, I don't mind a few keyboard shortcuts in this environment too, or modifiers like you're talking about, but generally it's a sculpture. We should feel like we're doing this, even if there are several other things going on, right? That's one of the great, you're computing with your body. You know, you're no longer doing that. You're using the whole space. But what does that mean? Okay, thank you for that. Tom, I guess you're next.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, just sort of referencing back some comments I made earlier on as well. But one of the things that is to me really interesting would be this exploration of connections, or as Vannevar Bush would have put it, breadcrumbs. It would be really cool to be able to take these objects and have them in the space, and then you make your connections between them, but then to be able to share those connections. I could see this as an incredible teaching tool where you would have a knowledge space where you would work through it with your students, and then you could give them the blank space, have them make the connections, and then overlay all of it. So where you could like use that as a departure point for a discussion in class and say, well, why do you think this goes with this and this and that? Not just, but this idea of being able to share breadcrumbs, which again is a trail, a breadcrumb that starts, with Vannevar Bush and the Memex and goes through Nelson Xanadu, and this idea of having these infinite connections. To me, the connections are much more important than the documents in many ways. So anything we can do to represent that and to be able to share that, I think would be amazing within the context of that bounded space that you're describing in the cube. And I probably just broke everything, but I'll cede the floor. I think I saw Fabian's head explode.
No, yeah, Frode, because you presented, you can always jump back and address whatever we discuss, and after that, Mark.
No, happy with that, Mr. Mark.
Okay, very quickly, because I'm keen to get onto the demo, so I don't want to steal from that. It was just a reflection I had listening to sort of Fred's discussion of the cube. It occurred to me that it's also, in a way, a volume within a volume. And if we accept the fact that increasingly now that things like papers being produced, perhaps more so in the sciences than the arts, are the paper is basically that tiny bit of the iceberg that shows above the water. So you have this vast assemblage of data, the visible representation, which is a paper. So another way of thinking of the cube, and this is one of its faces, and we could have a non-Euclidean one with many faces, but so in a sense, the thing that we used to think of as the paper is one of those, but all these other facets of it might be a way for us to engage with all these interlinked parts, be it its linkage out into the citations it makes, or underlying data to the set. Now I'll leave it there because I know time is tight. But thank you.
Mark, that is thank you, Fabian, for what you said earlier. Because yes, I'll jump in after this one. That is absolutely crucially the point, similar to what Tom said. Now the exciting bit is how. Right? We know that we're going to have a space with things in it. We call them knowledge objects. Generally, they're going to represent currently a PDF paper. In the future, hopefully, something more sophisticated. How do we put them together? How do we take them apart? And Fabian, you're next, but I have to beg Ken for comments because of all your experience. You can't just sit here and smile, you know.
Okay, whenever you're ready, I'm happy to jump in.
So I'll briefly do this, and then Ken. Because we mentioned it before, we also discussed about the cube. So that's a cube. That's the one I use to manage IoT at home and lights and whatnot. The nice thing about that cube is I can grasp it. Like it's literally the size of my palm, and then I can do a lot of things with it, which also means if I have such a tiny cube and I'm in maybe not the subway, but at least in the plane or the train, and I don't have so much physical space, I can still manipulate it. So it is pretty powerful. That being said, I can have other side of cubes, and you might recognize the brand then, but the point is they do stack and they have a specific affordance so that they can snap together. So you can combine more cubes, but also my home office is about a cube. So if you take that same cube, but you scale it up to, let's say, 2 by 2 by 2 meters, then I'm within arguably that cubes. So I think there are quite a few affordances and practical one that we elicited before, I think last week or even 2 weeks ago, that makes it quite an interesting primitive to start with. Plus, I think cubes are cool. Ken, please.
There are two ways to look at this. One is in terms of, okay, what's the immediate use of this? But one of the things that I've been trying to do is say, okay, right now, if I want to share, like the demo that I may show in a little bit, I have to put on one of these things. And one of the things that we know for sure is that I'm not going to spend my life walking out on the street, shopping at Whole Foods, hanging out with my friends, having coffee, wearing one of these things. However, I do believe we are within N years, where N is probably single digits, of what I've been calling the XR singularity, where we're basically going to be wearing these things or something like this, you know? And at that point, the whole thing will become socially invisible the way, you know, you don't get shocked when somebody takes out their phone because everybody has a phone. And then at that point, the cube and its relationship to the cube of your office or your subway ride or wherever you are will just be, hey, we're all just hanging out here and this is like a piece of paper or a card or whatever, and we won't even be thinking about it. So I think that in terms of the long-term question of the future of text, we kind of need to be situating everything into the very natural space of our physical worlds and just assuming that that plumbing is going to be there. So that's what I'd like to say at this point.
That was short and succinct and super, super, super important. That's the back of exactly what we talked about earlier now, because the way that we are sharing information, as you know, Ken, what we do with the visual meta thing is basically BibTech plus, right? If this stuff isn't ridiculously open and ridiculously discoverable, it's literally a CD-ROM joke for one person. So yes, the dream is absolutely that we have a meeting like this and we pass our cubes around. And doing that is, you know, even if we don't have the same system, Fabienne, please disconnect for a second. AI parsers, you can listen again now. or so, whatever it is, should be able to get most of the data and most of the thing. Yeah, absolutely. But Ken, do you have any stories from what you're doing in your lab on actual Brandel, that's funny. You need to talk about that in a second. Um, yeah, Ken, do you have any stories of interactions of knowledge sculpting?
Yeah, we have a rule for us that if I'm putting on my Quest 3 and you're putting on your Quest 3 and we're hanging out and we're seeing each other, base rule is that everybody is seeing the same thing from their point of view. That, we just have a shared server always going, and as much as possible, we're like, this is reality. It's just reality is has slightly different properties. I could show one quick demo to give the idea of it. So let me actually just I guess I could just hold on. Let me bring up a little JavaScript thing. Oh, there it is. Okay. Right there. So this is just a desktop view of our shared thing. I'll show you the desktop view because it's easier. I can do it in here, but again, I don't want the whole screen sharing will make everybody sick and everything. So one particular demo is, and normally when I run this, I'm putting this thing on, I'm wearing this, I'm seeing my room around me, and I'm seeing a cloud of words in front of me. And the words, these are just words that are, it's actually a single draw call to make all this, which is actually very convenient. And this is all JavaScript. And basically, if I if I hold down this guy here, I could be basically spinning this to the left, but it spins for everybody. It's like floating in the air for everybody. Or I could do operations like, hey, just sort everybody, sort them, or whatever, or do word associations. And I could, for example, highlight something and drag it, and then we've got an AI running behind that says, oh, you're associating this word with that word. You want to figure this thing out. But the important thing is everybody standing around is seeing this floating in the room. If I highlight something, you see it highlighted. And our fundamental rule, which is, again, trying to preview these things, is there isn't this, oh, I'm seeing something and you're seeing something else. We also kind of can see, somebody's name floating above their head or any other information or anything that's useful. But I think the most important thing that I want to kind of bring is that our rule is that it's just reality. Just like, if I see this, you see this. It isn't like, oh, I see a controller and you don't. So we're trying to extend that idea of object permanence to all of the knowledge info space, like in this case, 1,000 words floating in the air with behaviors.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Alan has his hand up.
Hey, Ken, thank you, Deanie. I didn't know I couldn't find the little hand up sign here. Ken, that's awesome. That is, looks on the surface very similar to something I was working on with magnetic words, and as a way to kind of understand complex text by almost playing with it actively. And so my question is, are you working on, or do you see any future of almost bringing articles in or books into a kind of a playground or a game, where the lines of what is traditionally thought of as a game, with levels and winning, is sort of blurred with, here I can run through these concepts, but then, I don't know, build with them or associate or make something. Is that how you're currently thinking about it? The kind of blend of game and knowledge sculpture?
Okay, I've got two answers to that. One is to show you something I did 29 years ago. This was in 1996. In 1996, you could finally put programs on the web, Java applets. So I got very excited about Java applets, and sort of in the late 90s, I just started making lots and lots of Java applets. And so this is actually the inspiration for the thing we're working on now, which is, let me share this. I guess let's just bring this up first. I had gone on a trip to the the Amazon rainforest in 1992, and then that stuck in my head, and I wrote a little story about it online. And then I took my short story and I was inspired by magnetic poetry, like on refrigerators. So I made something that I called kinetic poetry. And this is actually all of the words and phrases from my trip down the Amazon. And what's going on here is these things are swirling around because behind the scenes there are multiple threads running, and it knows about the little bits of 2 or 3 word phrases that made up my original story. And I can grab anything and move it around, or pin it or unpin it. And meanwhile, they're all trying to get back to what their neighbors were. And I can blow forces through this, like I can swirl it, or I can blow a wind through it, whatever. And meanwhile, what's going on is that the kinetic poetry is constantly trying to reconstitute the story. And this was just an experiment to see if I could, create this kind of abstracted kind of meaning out of words. So what we're trying to do now is take that, and not just words, but phrases. Maybe you say something and your speech utterance becomes something that has a meaning that floats around, and you interact with it and ask the question whether the social connection between people and the 3D-ness of it lets you make more interesting structure. So that's kind of the journey we're on. And you had another question about that, right? Which was, what was your question?
Just along the lines of blending reading and active reading with not exactly gamification, but the sort of
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So one of the important things we need to do is train the data-driven AIs that are going to help us with this. And some of that can come from, there's lots and lots of text out there. There's literature, there's millions of books. However, some of it has to come from understanding how people interact in this kind of new space. And as far as we know, the only way that we're going to be able to gather that data is to put a free game that is downloadable to anybody. Somebody has one of these and they go to the Meta store and it's like, hey, play this. This is fun, because that way we'll be able to gather lots and lots of data about what people do. So our plan going forward is to produce these free 3-dimensional word games for shared XR, so that we can get the data and find out about human behavior and train the AIs to respond to it.
That's fantastic. I'll see the tape floor thing, but I got more questions on that, and that's worked on something similar.
Quick thing, and then I think it will link to you, Dini. Namely, can you hear the demo you just showed? Was it live or was it pre-recorded?
Oh, everything was live.
Okay, because to me, regardless of what the content of the demo was there, but being able to show a demo that was 29 years old, it's impressive. I cannot show something that was 20 days old. So 29 years is, I don't think people realize, which does link then to Dini in terms of the next. It's how do we at the same time make something that is state of the art or exciting and new, and also that, it doesn't go back to an archive where it cannot be run, cannot be played with, because I was showing the Lego cubes before, those demos are also things to play with and build on top of, even not just conceptually, but how it was done. So I think it's, I don't actually know how to do this, but it must be done, in my opinion.
I would love to have a copy of it, Ken, to put in the next, because that kind of work in 92, we're seeing it done in other ways, right? Other kinds of technologies. And even someone like BP Nickel in Canada was doing a lot of work with this, but using Unix, trying to make generative work. Jean-Pierre Valp in Paris and Philippe Boots. There are a lot of the folks working in the early 90s on this kind of approach to poetry, especially. I would love to have a copy of it. So if you're interested in sharing that and putting it into the next, we can talk later. Thank you.
So in the interest of time and to pressure Brendel a bit, please, demo time.
Cool. Thank you. No, I love pressure. Let's see. This is just going to be this tab. So the first thing, discussion about cubes made me want to show this guy that I made a few years ago. just as an opportunity for sort of representing sort of lensing. So this is something that was the branding for when the Fifth Avenue store reopened, and it's a cube, and you look through it at different sides and you see different sort of pieces of information. And I just thought that was pretty nice as a way of being able to use it as simultaneously to what Peter was talking about with lenses, and what Frode was talking about as cubes and facets. So I think it's a nice little point of reference that can work quite well. I wanted to talk about so connecting the little bit of new work that I've done to some of the other stuff that I've had before is, so this is what's coming. The idea of the HTML model element, the idea that people will have browser windows that look roughly like this, and they can kind of see objects sort of get bigger or smaller or animate and things like that. And one of the things that's very convenient when somebody literally has a teapot, or if I think there's just an animation coming up where somebody sort of peeks out of it. It doesn't matter. What I'm conscious of, though, is that while the internet and while a lot of people make a lot of stock and get a lot of benefit out of having static fixed 3D objects, I'm very conscious that the most important part of the web is actually this stuff here. The fact that there's this text and there's this dynamic kind of layout and things like that. And I find it particularly challenging when people don't have the ability to flex those things, and this is still strictly two-dimensional in terms of its conceptual representation in comparison to this teapot. So as folks have probably seen before, I've done a lot of things about trying to spatialize information. This is a thing that happens to be Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but it can be literally any book. And this one, if you reload it, if you open it up and turn the pages, then this is literally the entire book, and it's kind of advancing through it at the rate that it would if you were kind of looking at it. And it also looks kind of like a Penguin classic or something else, and that it has some material properties that reflect what it is. I went to more effort to create something because I couldn't tell where the objects were in Stripe Presses page, so I made a dynamic generator of it. This is something that allows you to sort of dynamically configure all of these attributes and change the type and colors and things like that, so that you can kind of reacquaint yourself with the material properties of what objects are in order to have those convey meaning. I think an important part of embodied cognition and extended mind is being able to think with the space, and that means having objects that represent those things. So the very latest thing that I did, which was kind of as much a sort of a technical exercise as anything else, was to be able to build boxes. And what you were talking about earlier, Frode, about boxes, I thought was very apropos, because containers are things that other things are in, and it's good to have good representations of them. So this is just it started out as kind of a 3D printable box, something that you could kind of design, and depending on the size and things like that. But it's fully configurable, and you can change the all of the parameters that you would want in order to make it a nice kind of apple-shaped box. Apple doesn't like round corners. You need to square the exponent. You need to square the radius in order to get proper squircles, things like that. So you can do that here. But the thing that I thought was really important about this is that it means that you can have containment and boxes and elements that actually kind of tell you about them and what they are doing, and all of the sort of different subtleties that we get from really living in the world. It's other than just saying, like, synthetic reality needs to actually pass a certain kind of smell test of how good things look in order for us to be able to kind of relate to them on a sort of a natural level. And so I think that it's really valuable to take the opportunity wherever possible to think about what that quality and realism does to what we think those objects are, and how far we need to go in order to kind of just say, okay, this is real now, this is an object, rather than some sort of very coarse stand-in for an object. And so yeah, that's what I wanted to show.
Brandon, who's doing the modeling for you? Who's doing all that 3D modeling work?
This is all me. So this is me, but it's not just modeling. This is programs, right? So I write programs that do this modeling. So this is an object that I have written the systems to be able to do all of the sort of, it's not modeling, but the latent space of the model. So rather than, so like it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's possible to model this book, but it's harder to come up with a system that models all possible categories of book like this. But I think it's useful because it means that then anybody can just get a book and have the book kind of look the way they want. And I think that there are important skeuomorphic, but yeah, really base kind of expectations that we have about what reality consists of that it's really valuable to be able to kind of get past that
This is
I really enjoy about this process.
This is interesting from my perspective because I've been thinking about born digital work, right? Work that are born for the digital environment, made in the digital environment, not in the physical world. I've been talking about that a long time. And so now I'm thinking about it, kind of a theory about virtual objects. So some that are born as physical objects modeled for the virtual world are not born virtual, right? They're virtual objects from the real. But what you're suggesting is a born virtual object made
A born virtual object. Yeah, but one that also has the depth of dimensionality that a real physical object has. You know, when we have a book, we'll talk about a book as having these characteristics, but really we do see a lot more. And there are these material attributes, and rather than merely being skeuomorphic and trying to slavishly kind of reproduce all of the physical aspects, but simply being cognizant that those aspects exist, they are informational channels, and when we decide attentively to think about what they encode, then we stand a better job of making a digital environment as meaningful as the built physical ones that we have.
Yeah, so I'm coming up with a theory for the like three different scenarios working in VR, and what you just offered me is a fourth, or actually it fits in one of the three potentially. But actually it is a fourth, because I've imagined that if we're looking at a book in real life, in the real world, and then we're going to make a book in the virtual world, the natural tendency is to make it skeuomorphic, right? What I've been struggling with is, what does a book look like in the virtual world that does not look like a book in the real world, right? What can we do that's different? So that's one idea. But then also the concept of objects that are born in that virtual space that have no connection to the real world, that are so different. And I'll stop there because we're out of time.
Yes. And the angry moderator is back. That is me today. I will, because I see a lot of hands, so people don't want to stop there. Yes, indeed, Carl, I am angry now. Put the eyebrows and all. No, but jokes aside, people don't want to stop. That's clearly obvious. So it means we're going to go back to this at some point. We'll organize this. I do put a reference because in mid-December, we did have a discussion on parametric design, including inclusion in WebXR. It is indeed extremely powerful. It loops back a lot of things in terms of reference and affordances that we need to use. So please, if somebody also wants to step forward to not even present on this, but like spark the conversation, do come forward, whoever you are. If you have a demo, great. If you don't have a demo, that's also perfectly fine, and we'll dig deeper on this. So it is the hour. So thanks, everyone.